Yes, but it is a bold statement from a reinvigorated, clearly Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Of course, he was elected by his party back in July as the Tory leader, and therefore the leader of the largest party becomes Prime Minister. But this is the first time that the British people have their say, and this is the mandate that he wanted, and a mandate where very clearly during the 6 weeks of this general election campaign, he has again and again and again, basically it's been his mantra, let's get Brexit done. Now, some people don't quite believe that statement in the sense that the 31st of January 2020 will only be the first phase. What will happen then is there's a negotiation about the future of the relationship of the United Kingdom, divorcing the 27 other EU member states. And what is interesting, I think, is that we heard a more magnanimous tone today from Boris Johnson, because with this comfortable, decisive majority, I think it buys him some time. I think it buys him a lot of clout. And it was interesting to hear the Prime Minister in Downing Street talk during his address to journalists, very much saying, I know, addressing not just his supporters, but to Labour traditional voters in Leave areas who voted for the Conservatives and have helped Boris Johnson win and the Conservative government win this majority, to say, I know that I've had your vote on loan and I will repay you. I will repay that trust. I will make sure that Brexit is done, and I will also make the National Health Service a top priority. I will also ensure that there are many opportunities across the United Kingdom for everyone. So I think it is a more relaxed, in some sense, reinvigorated Prime Minister. And of course, what is unknown is if this decisive victory will allow him perhaps to allow the transition, instead of being at the end of 2020, for that phase 2 and a decision on the relationship, future relationship with the EU, perhaps he'll feel less bound by that and lengthen it. Perhaps also is the speculation here today that it will be a softer Brexit rather than a hard one.
Benedict, this was, of course, a high-stakes election, largely dominated by Brexit, as we've been saying. Did other issues really come into the equation for voters in the UK?
They did. I just mentioned one of them, which is the National Health Service. And I think in that sense, the pledge to invest a lot of money was increased maybe, and I think it probably did influence the Conservative Party manifesto. But yes, the issues that came into it is one in trust in politicians. And I think, of course, let's remember there are 650 constituencies, and voters are basically asked to put one cross on their ballot paper if it is to be valid, whether by postal vote or in polling station. And it is to elect an MP, a Member of Parliament. It's not actually a prime ministerial election, but I think uppermost in people's minds, certainly from talking to people, and when we look at a survey published late this evening, I think it was very much who of the two men, Boris Johnson or Jeremy Corbyn, will have the keys to Downing Street, will govern the country. Because, of course, we know about Brexit and we know about NHS, but what always happens in this country and in all countries is that events intervene. And the person that they least didn't like, it seems, was Boris Johnson. So it was very interesting to hear that inclusive language from Boris Johnson. It'll be interesting to see. We think that there's going to be a mini reshuffle on Monday, who he includes in that government, if he brings along newer faces. Many older, in the sense of longer in Parliament, people, MPs from the Conservatives, have stood down. So we're going to see lots of new names, lots of new faces. Will there be a big change in his government? And we think that he will then very much reintroduce the withdrawal agreement as soon as the end of next week. His message is full steam ahead. Let's get Brexit done and let's get other things done. Let's begin the healing he talked about, and let's get closure, and let's everybody enjoy Christmas, and then let's make sure that the country moves ahead. Of course, business investment has been flatlining here in the UK, and we've seen a bounce in the pound today, and perhaps in the coming days we will also see more investment in this country, because that threat of nationalisation that was very much on the Labour programme, of course, has now gone away.
And that is the big question. Will